Hi, this is Stan Bush.
Hi, this is Stephanie Calvert.
This is John Payne.
This is Jack Hughes.
Hey everyone, this is Britt Lightning from Vixen.
Hey everybody, this is Prescott Niles.
Hi, I'm Carrie Stevens.
Hello, I'm Kofi Baker.
You're listening to Play That Rock and Roll.
This is not a test. This is Play That Rock and Roll. I'm your host, Joe K., and today our guests are Mike Determan and Tom Rosy, who are the directors of the new documentary film Behind the Bucket. Today we are stepping outside our normal topic of classic rock in order to celebrate Star Wars Day, as this is getting posted on May the 4th. And may the 4th be with you. So I am familiar with this project because Mike is actually a personal friend of mine. He invited me to a screening of this film in Kenosha, Wisconsin about this time last year, and since then I have wanted to spotlight this project on my channel as the film really impressed me. This documentary is all about the Midwest Garrison of the 501st Legion, which is a community of dedicated Star Wars fans who design and build film-accurate costumes of their favorite Star Wars characters, specifically from the Empire. Stormtroopers, Imperial officers, Darth Vader, and so on. Members of the 501st dress up in these elaborate and finely tuned costumes and then make appearances at conventions and other fan events. They also lend their support by appearing at fundraisers and charity events, which adds a whole new dynamic. For some, it now goes beyond being just a hobby and it becomes something that does real, tangible good in people's lives. They visit kids who are in the hospital, they've done work with Gold Star families, and there are several moments in the film where you see how people, particularly children, react when being visited by the 501st. And it gets quite emotional. It very well may bring you to tears. This film is about one of the coolest ways that people have channeled their fandom and passion into something that can support, uplift, and inspire others. If you're a fan of Star Wars, you should check this group out. In this conversation, we kick off Star Wars Day by talking about our own fandoms of those films, how we were introduced to them, how we engaged with them as kids, and what still impresses us about them today. And then we talk about their documentary, Behind the Bucket, where the idea came from, how the film evolved over time, and when they realized they were creating something special with it. They also provide an update on when fans can expect this film to be available via streaming or DVD, as well as some news about what their next project is going to be. I think this is a great documentary, and I cannot wait to see it again. So I hope you will check it out once it is released. You can learn more about the film at their website, behindthebucket.com. You can also find Behind the Bucket on Facebook and Instagram. And with that, here's my conversation with the co-directors of the new documentary film, Behind the Bucket, Mike Determan and Tom Rosy. We are here with Tom Rosy and Mike Determan, who are the co-directors of the Behind the Bucket documentary, which I was lucky enough to see a screening of last year, which really impressed me. It's a lot of fun. We're going to talk about this documentary as we go on. But before we get into that, I thought it would be fun, since this is going up on Star Wars Day, May the 4th, to talk about just our fandoms of Star Wars, because that's really at the core of your documentary. So let's go back in time a little bit. Tom, I'm going to start with you. When you were growing up, as a kid, I assume you were introduced to Star Wars. How did that first spark happen? When did you first see those movies, and what made them register with you?
Well, I was born in 77.
the year Star Wars came out. So it's always been a part of my life, and I think some of my earliest memories are taking my figures and matching them to the movies that they were in. My dad took me to the drive-in to see the Empire, so I saw that in the theater. I have a vivid memory of that. Um, and it's just always resonated with me. I was the only kid of my group that liked Star Wars. Everyone knew me as a Star Wars kid. It probably didn't surprise anyone that I ended up with armor and now walk around as a stormtrooper. So it's just always really been a part of my past and present, and even so much so that when we had the dark ages where there wasn't any content coming out after the three movies, that I was going to comic book shops and picking up things that I could find, or I was going even to thrift stores and or flea markets and buying old toys and anything I could find Star Wars. So it's always kind of been a little bit of an obsession with me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're not alone on that. I remember my first memory of seeing Star Wars came later. I was one of the first movies I ever saw in theaters was A New Hope, the special edition when they were re-released to theaters. And as a kid, I have faint memories of like remembering like science class and remembering like the limitations of like actual rockets.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I didn't know anything about filmmaking. So as I'm in the theater being totally blown away by these visuals, I remember as a kid being totally confused about how did they film this? You know, the notion of movie magic just was very real for me as a kid, and I loved that. So Mike, same question for you, man. Like how were you first introduced to Star Wars, and did it really grip you right away, or did you come to it later?
First off, I have to say I just noticed your shirt. Is that an Escape from New York? Oh my gosh, I love it. It's amazing. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to deviate. But
We're talking about good
and Tom
movies today.
and Tom, I love your shirt, Skulligan's Island. That is amazing too. I just noticed that too.
It goes in the dark, actually.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
even better. Okay, I'm not trying to deviate. All right, Star Wars. Yes, Star Wars. Wow, I would have to say that it is very impactful in my life. I remember seeing my earliest recollection of a Star Wars film was um, The Return of the Jedi. I remember seeing it in theater. My grandpa was there as well, and reason why this is a core memory is because my grandpa fell asleep through it, and I thought it was hilarious. And for some reason, I also remember the little teddy bears. So that was definitely um, the Ewoks. If anybody's thinking, why did he say teddy bears? That was one of the things that kind of stuck out, and it just kind of followed me through my life. I thought it was a well constructed film, and I too was amazed at how did they how did they do this? I mean, how did they capture these scenes? How did they make us believe that we were in space? How did that TIE fighter, fly around, or how did that X-wing fly around? Like I was I was astounded when I was a kid, and I loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. Did like Tom said, collecting, memorabilia and stuff from the movies, was that also something that was a part of your childhood?
Yes, a lot of the original characters too, and I wish that I could find my Yoda with the snake because that would be amazing. Um, yeah, so we are
Like,
definitely avid collectors of the characters. What was it?
you're always misplacing your snake.
Exactly. I mean, that's an unfortunate thing. It happens quite often, but that particular one is worth some money. But yeah, we used to collect them. I remember I did fall into the trap of getting the characters for when the Phantom Menace was out, when they had a midnight release of all the characters that were coming out. I ended up buying all those up, and yeah, those the $5 a piece, they're worth now like $3 a piece. So
Oh,
hey. Those are great investment, and those are amazing movies. I mean, all right, I'll go on mute now.
yeah, no, that's great. Well, what's funny is like our earliest memories, all three of us are really surrounded, of course, around the original trilogy. But it was really the prequel trilogy that was the first batch that was stuff that was all new to us. You know, there was that, like Tom, you said, there was that dark era where there was really nothing out, except for the special editions. Did you guys see the special editions in theaters?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely was there for all that. I mean, when that came out, we were even the anniversary stuff that where the New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi came back into theaters on their anniversaries. I mean, I was there to see it in theater again, which is so weird. If I could just for 1 minute, when you see those movies on the big screen, you start catching things that you don't really see at home. And I never saw this before, but there's a scene in Empire where it's the famous scene where Luke, I am your father. Well, there's wind gusting in there, and you see Vader's helmet kind of like lift up, like it's weird. And the stormtroopers, they have it. I know this for a fact. They have their armor on the wrong way. The bicep is turned the opposite way, and like in a few scenes, and you're just like when but it's weird because you don't notice that stuff. So it's always great to see those in the theater like that.
Oh, certainly. And to echo that, I also, it's funny, the same weekend I saw your documentary. In 3 days, I saw three Star Wars films in theaters. I saw the re-release of Return of the Jedi. I saw your film Behind the Bucket. And then at the Milwaukee Film Festival, there's another documentary called A Disturbance in the Force, which is about the Star Wars Holiday Special. That
So
to me was like seeing those three films 3 days in a row was like, I guess, the apex of my Star Wars fandom, like right there.
I just heard about that documentary literally this week, and I definitely have to see that.
Yeah,
The
yeah, it's good.
special, yeah.
Mike, what do you remember? Did you see the special edition re-releases when you were younger, or do you have any memories of that, or do you have memories of seeing the prequels in the theaters? What was it
I
like, versus when you were a little kid?
The re-releases with the enhanced scenes, I remember getting those as a box set.
Okay,
I
yeah.
had I had grandparents that never knew what to get me for Christmas or my birthday, because my birthday is during Christmas time, so they wanted to do something special and something different. And for it almost seemed like for 3 years in a row that there was a new edition, so I'd get a new box set every year. So I ended up seeing them at home, and they were VHS. As far as the prequels, yes, I remember standing in line for the Phantom Menace up in Milwaukee at one of the theaters up there in the rain, waiting to see it. And it was a magical experience because even though I'm not the biggest fan of that movie, it's something. And it was something. It was a good attempt at making a Star Wars film. I mean, it still got redeeming qualities to it. So, but it was that magic of, hey, I wasn't there in '77. I wasn't standing in line, to see a film, but now I am, and it was just one of those things that I was thinking about the whole, like, I was out there for about an hour and a half.
Yeah, having that experience of like seeing like what felt like Star Wars for our generation. Maybe we have different feelings about them later on, but in that initial moment of going to the theater was definitely a very memorable experience for me as well. Tom, let's go back to you here and talk a little bit about that prequel era. You know, I think all three of us probably have most affection for the original trilogy, but do you have any hot takes or opinions on that prequel era in the early 2000s?
Well, yeah, I mean, one, I could say that it's very hard for me to understand that people love Star Wars for different entry points. When someone asks me, "Do you like Star Wars?" My brain just automatically goes to the first three movies, and it's like, yeah, that's how you know Star Wars, right? From those movies, and then you expand it on to this and that and TV shows. But no, a lot of people love Star Wars because of the video games, and a lot of people love Star Wars for the very first time because of the prequels, and I think that's awesome. I had an opinion of the prequels. I've changed my opinion here and there. It is what it is. These movies are geared towards children. George Lucas was still doing the same thing. it got a little political. I remember going to the theater and I wanted to love it so much, and there were so many aspects that I did love. The the new ships, the new costumes, all that. That's the stuff I really got into. Um, as the reason why I cosplay them right now, but um, it was a time, like the Jar Jar Binks hatred and all that stuff. It's I don't mind him. It's he's goofy, but let's take it back to 1983 when the Ewoks came out. And now my core memory of the Ewoks is I love the Ewoks, because I was the right demographic for the Ewoks. So, but there were people that hated the Ewoks at that time, and there are people that hated Jar Jar, and there's people that hate this and that, and it is what it is. It's a good time to be a nerd. I'm glad we continue to have these movies, but I think with the current events and things that might be happening, we just want to make sure that we're trying to tell the story, more so than trying to push an agenda. And that's the only way I can see that these movies go wrong in certain ways. But for the most part, it's a good time to be a nerd.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that more, especially, about, the politics of the prequels. It did feel bizarre. It makes them weirdly dated in a way that they didn't necessarily have to be. Um, but Mike, this question is something I've actually always wanted to ask you, because as you have such a background in filmmaking, when it comes to those special edition re-releases and the George Lucas quote, I think it's like, films are never finished; they're just abandoned. Is that something that registers with you strictly as someone with a filmmaking background? Like, did that make sense to you, or do you take more of a fan approach where people were more resistant to kind of the meddling that George did after, all these years after?
I agree 100%, and I've actually used that line several times.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is that yeah, I'm glad that he was able to add those scenes and things that he really wanted to, because as a fan, like even if I don't like them, let's say for example like prequels, even if I don't like them, I'm still a fan because it's still a Star Wars product of some sort, so it's still enjoyable. But what filmmaker doesn't like being able to keep adding on to their work? But at some point, to be honest, you have to just say, hey, I think the best thing that I heard was the other day, a buddy of mine, Ken, had mentioned that, and I did not know this, Persian rugs have a flaw that are worked into them because nothing's supposed to be perfect. If your film has those flaws, why are you going to try and fix them? If everybody liked them the way that they were, call it a day. Say, hey, I won. I started this huge like movie empire and toy empire. And why do I need to, update those films? I think, sometimes people keep meddling, keep tweaking. Nothing's going to be perfect. And that's the unfortunate thing in life. Nothing is perfect, but it's those imperfections that make it better.
Yeah, well said. Do you feel that you had any temptations that George might have felt when it comes to editing your documentary, Behind the Bucket? Do you feel like sometime in 25 years there's going to be a re-release of Behind the Bucket special edition?
100%. During the editing process, we kept tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. And the thing is that you have to stop at some point. You have to say, hey, this is the best film that we can do with what we got. Like we didn't have the resources that we needed to make the film that we were looking to make. I love the film, don't get me wrong, but what a filmmaker sees in their head, or a director, or a cinematographer, is a lot different than what a person that's watching it sees. That person never understands or sees what's up here. That's a frustrating part, because I'll pick out 25 different things that I would change, and someone would say, hey, like yourself, I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved how it came together. But we pick apart those small little things, and because it's, essentially what people like to refer to as your baby. It's your baby. You want to nurture it, you want to get it to grow, and you want it to go off to what Tom says, college, and you want it to do it relatively well. If you feel that it stumbles and scrapes its knee, like you get frustrated. Nobody else notices that.
Tom, same topic to you. I wonder how you feel about your experience making this film. We're going to talk about it more in depth, but just on the note about uh, specifically the idea of going back and re-editing a project and perhaps running the risk of over editing or over doing it in post. Um, when it comes to filmmaking, like, did you find yourself sort of on a weird parallel with maybe what George Lucas was when it comes to those old movies, or did you feel, like a great sense of relief when a final cut was arrived at?
Well, I could say, which is funny. I just actually we're talking about this the other day. As much as I love this project, and it was amazing, and we made so many great memories, and things happened that we really wanted in there, and we could have kept filming and kept filming because we're filming events and we're filming them as they happen. So that's why things are spread out a little bit, and that's why it takes so long to do a documentary like this. But also, there's things I wanted, and then COVID hits, and then you stop, and you can't do much more of anything, and you kind of feel anxious about that. But also, new other opportunities happen, and things that you didn't expect to happen because of this time lapse, right? And now you have an animator, now you have a different take or a new event that you didn't even think about. Star Wars Celebration coming to Chicago was an absolute like, it was genius, that the timing was amazing that we were there for that. And so, there's these moments where you just want to keep capturing stuff, but you want to be done with it too. As much as, like Mike was saying as well, we just now want to put this out there. We want people to see it. We want people to be inspired by it. Now, already within screenings that we've had on it, we've brought people into the Garrison. They've joined the club just by, it was like the final clinch pin for them. So it's affecting people. It's telling a story. I'm pretty happy with it. There's always things that you would love to do as far as with budget, like with music or those kinds of things. But I think we got the heart of the story, and I think it sends an emotional, but educational, like message to people about what this club is and why they do what they do, and the charity work that's involved. And so that's what's important. And even though we filmed the Midwest Garrison, this story is interchangeable with other states and other parts of the world, because there are garrisons all over the world, and there's people doing the same thing all over. And we all built this community under this umbrella of Star Wars, but within layers of that, there's this community of people trying to use this fandom to give back. And so that's what this story really is about.
Absolutely. And you are right that how you guys presented that fan community. I mean, I have a vivid memory of being in the screening, and kind of the gears were turning in my head a little bit, where Star Wars, sometimes it's a franchise that's so well known you might take it for granted, but watching how much fun everybody on screen is having and how meaningful it is, like, I went on that website and looked at some of the uniforms afterwards. So one last question for you guys, strictly on as a fan topic, and then we can dive into the doc. Tom, let's start with you. This podcast that I do here is primarily about music. Today we're talking about movies, but the soundtrack of Star Wars is such a huge part of that franchise's appeal. So I just wonder, Tom, what would you say is maybe your favorite part of Star Wars music, and just do you have any thoughts on the soundtrack of those films as a whole?
Well, I think it's intelligent and very smart to use an orchestra in that movie, because music of its time dates the movie. So to achieve that, accomplish or get to that accomplishment to where this music is not only timeless but beautiful. Um, look at all the music, John Williams has made throughout his years. So, but people know the music and people are, drawn to it, and it causes emotions in them about not only, like olfactory type stuff where you hear the music and you think of your childhood even, or, core memories. So, music's everything, I think. And that's why, once again, like in my own doc, you can select certain types of music. And even when you're editing, you have music to fit the pacing of the edit. Right. So, I got hung up on a song that I really liked in there while we were watching it edited, and we couldn't really get the rights to that song, and it wasn't the same, because you know what I mean. So yeah, music is important.
Was there a moment in the films where that really stands out for you as a particularly just powerful moment with the soundtrack? I mean, obviously there's the intro crawl, which grabbed so many people right off the bat.
Yeah,
There's the Imperial March. I mean, I think there's some subtle music in
Darth
the
Maul's
battle
music.
at Hoth. Or go ahead.
Yeah, with Darth Maul, the
Oh yeah, that's right.
duel. I mean, that's just, yeah. I mean, it sets the tone, right? It sets the tone for who the character is. Princess Leia has a soft, you know, um, orchestra behind her. Her entry when she's entering. You have an emotion, a feeling with her music, right? How she's supposed to be portrayed. Darth Vader, dun dun dun. That's him to a T, right? So music is everything. Vibration is everything, right? Um, we feel the music. So, um, it's all great. Of course, all the ones you mentioned, plus, I would have to say, Duel of Fates is one of my favorites, and that comes from the prequels. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the absolute strongest parts of that whole prequel trilogy is the music of that is fantastic. That's one thing that you can't take away from that. Mike, same kind of question for you. Seeing these movies, we know them, like the back of our hands. I've seen them so many times, but when you think of the soundtrack of the films, what are the scenes or what are the scores from the films that really affected you the most?
I I'd have to say the one that is the most memorable is definitely after waiting in line for an hour and a half for the Phantom Menace and getting the Duel of Fates. I mean, yes, I could go all day long about the original ones and how they impacted me, but that one, it was just because I felt like a child again. Like
Yeah,
it was in awe. Like, I mean, even though I may not necessarily be the biggest fan of those films, and that's just because of a storytelling aspect,
sure.
but it was magical. I mean, it brought me back to being like a 10-year-old, and I'm like, this is amazing. I love this. This is great. But sound design and music has such a deep impact. I dare anybody to watch one of their favorite scenes in a film, turn off the sound and watch it and see, is it as impactful without that music and without that sound? It's not going to be. There's something magical. Like you can look at something and it's going to look completely different. Your mind sees it a different way when you add that sound design, when you add that music. So yes, music and the way that they scored it, just amazing.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that because, like, I remember when this new uh, trilogy came out, and the episode 7 hit theaters, and none of us knew what it was going to be, and I remember having the theatrical experience of that opening crawl blast. I remember in the theater, I like almost teared up because it was just like I forgot how much I love even this. It was such a strong note that all of those films open with, and it's such a great way to set the tone. So yeah, that's another just add to the gigantic pile of stuff that makes those films so special. Mike, I'm going to stay with you for this question. Uh, as we're going to turn to the subject of documentaries now, you know, um, obviously your film Behind the Bucket is not the only documentary about Star Wars. Are there other documentaries sort of about the Star Wars universe or perhaps about the notion of fandom that you've seen over the years that have impressed you, or are there any documentaries, not even necessarily about, Star Wars or movies, but documentaries that might have inspired you or guided you or gave you ideas on how you wanted to present this film?
I really like the series, The Toys That Made Us.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
I'd have to say that was, and that to that extent, and I know this will be further on, but that's kind of the style that the newer project would be. But in more short form, episodic. But that sort of storytelling, I really was gravitated towards that. That and the films that made us. It was the films or movies? The movies that made us.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I think that those were the most recent ones that I can clearly say that were impactful on this project.
Very cool. Tom, is this the first documentary that you've worked on?
Yeah, so it's not the first film I worked on.
Okay.
I worked as some. Actually, that's how me and Mike met. Should I tell you the story real quick?
Yeah, let's hear it. How did you guys connect?
So, I was a prop guy. I was making costumes, member of the 501st. Into films, I was on a couple sets for being an extra. One with Patrick Swayze, one with Brian Dennehy and Jason Isaac, and a couple of different scenes, that made it, pilots that didn't make it. But anyways, the filmmaking process, it was interesting. So I really liked it. Um, I was always into the filmmaking, as far as the behind the scenes. We talked a little bit about the prequels. One of the things that really inspired me was in the box set, there was a behind the scenes tape that came with it. So you had your three movies and then the behind the scenes, and seeing all the ships and the people operating, Jabba the Hutt, you seen that scene of the guys that doing the tail, and I mean it just was amazing. And so this is where I started like going into my garage and trying to put one and two together to make some kind of blaster or gun, so plus I was always an artist, and drawing, painting, sculpting, all that. So I had this creative side to me, and costuming was one way I started to celebrate that fandom. And I was with my sister out to eat, and she's talking to me about a movie or a friend of hers that she knows that makes movies. His name was BJ, and she's like, well, "Why don't you give him a call?" And I said, "You know what? I'm gonna call him right now." So I called him up. I said, "Hey, my name's Tom. I heard you make movies. I do props and different things. So if you ever need anything," he's like, "Oh my God, it's amazing. Actually, I got a table read. Why don't you come on out?" So I went ahead and did that. I didn't know anyone there. I met up with the director, the producers, and everyone, and then told them what I could do. They gave me a task. I did it in a day or two. And they needed to make some spikes for the bottom of some running shoes, but they needed to be safe. So, anyways, long story short, I'm on set. I meet Mike, which is one of the cameramen, and we just hit it off. And we seen each other through the filming of this movie called The Rocket. I was on the crew. I did whatever they asked. I did little things here. I made the props. And then I just had a really great time. And I stayed friends with all of those people that were on set there. Dave as well, who was the editor of Behind the Bucket. So, from there, we just started hanging out, and we see each other at C2E2, which is a local, convention that we have here in Illinois. And then, we got talking about making movies, and we did a little YouTube thing for our buddy BJ of the Green Lantern. I made some props for that. And he said, I started talking to him. I said, let's make a movie about this club, like they're coming on, I think it was 20 years at the time or something like that. And I said it'd be a pretty cool documentary. And without a beat, we said, yeah, let's do it. We came up with a name right then and there. I said, let's call it Behind the Bucket. And so we just started this whole thing at an after hours party at comic book convention over a few beers. And within a week, we were starting to interview people. We started going to the events. Star Wars Celebration came through, and we just became good friends. And through this process, I think we both learned a lot.
I imagine any filmmaking experience has tons of lessons.
Yeah,
I like what you said about watching documentaries that are about filmmaking itself. Like I'm sure you've seen the Lord of the Rings special editions. They have all those that docs that are about everything behind the scenes. That stuff is, I think, more influential than people realize. And talking to you with your background in props and costumes, I mean, I bet that stuff connects really well, and I can see why this would be such a great subject for a documentary. You guys are talking about this film, over drinks, and you're having a good time, and it sounds like a solid idea. But, every film, the ideas grow and change as it goes on. Tell me a little bit about the original idea of what you thought this film would look like, at the very genesis of it, and how it grew over time to the final product.
well, I think Mike will tell you we thought this would be probably no more than something we upload to YouTube.
Oh,
Uh, and as we filmed and we talked to people, there was a lot of times where, well, I took on the interview part. So this one other thing I could say that I've really learned to love in the filmmaking process is the interaction with people, the interviewing, the producer part of it. Like I love making connections and tracking down like celebrities or people to talk to and get them excited about what we're working on, and get them to agree to come on or talk to me. And yeah, so it was just a matter of time before we would film things, as they come, and then things started to develop. There started to be a story. It started to naturally come out. We obviously stuck with a few different people that either by personality or by their story we chose to follow. But initially, we had so many interviews. We interviewed so many members, and to that effect, they had a lot to say, but they said a lot of the same things, which is a great thing to show unity, but not so much to tell stories. So Mike was and Dave was very with it to follow the story where it was going. That was we were able to get some touching moments. I had to learn to let people cry, and and that I can make people cry, which is interesting. But also that there's real emotion with what people are talking about in this group, and they really feel it. And so it's almost like you know you're gonna find a story there, so it's just a matter of when and who. So you have to be very flexible, I think, which is the interesting thing between documentaries and feature films. Everything is very well planned out. The documentary, you have to be very flexible for almost anything. And Mike is an animal. He would come out to Illinois all the time, and this was filmed very guerrilla style, and
oh,
we
yeah.
were conventions where we had to follow people and run to things even sometimes, or at least hurry up as much as possible. Things happened that we didn't expect to happen that we caught, which was amazing as well. So there's a lot of these moments where it's amazing, and I think that's the most exhilarating part of the documentary part is that it's I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like putting the puzzle together without having the box to know what the puzzle is going to look like.
Yeah.
That makes, yeah,
Yes. No, that makes perfect sense.
yeah,
And I think the final product is fantastic. You talk about, letting people cry. I mean, there's moments where I can tell you that there were people in the audience of that screening that were tearing up, me included at moments. So very effective. Mike, let's go back to the genesis of this idea. Tom suggests what he's thinking, and in that moment, I mean, it's a good idea, so I can see why you got on board. But as the project started and as you guys start filming stuff and talking to people, was there a moment during the filmmaking process where you had like an aha moment that you felt like, okay, we're onto something here. We have something special here where it should be a proper documentary and perhaps beyond just something for YouTube?
Uh, I would have to say that that was midway through. Um, for me personally, it was midway through the experience. It was actually Star Wars Celebration. It was
In
there's a part in
Chicago?
there in Chicago. It was. I mean, we were filming, we were gathering things. I will admit, as a filmmaker, I was used to narrative pieces, not necessarily documentaries. I was ill prepared as the DP for this. I'll throw that out there, but I learned a lot on how, you know, a documentary comes together. But it was at that point at Star Wars Celebration, we were waiting outside. There's a part where the Gold Star, it's the Gold Star part. So it's children of or children where either a parent has been killed in the line of duty for police officers. Sorry, I'm kind of stumbling over my words right now, but it was at that point when we were going in, and I was just I remember Heather, one of the troopers, had brought up her her father, and it's like, wow, like, there was this connection, and to me that was very impactful. It's like, okay, she's taking off her bucket, explaining to these kids what had happened in her life. And I was like, whoa, this is more than a 15-minute piece for YouTube. This is going to be something big. It's cool we're going to these conventions and seeing people have fun, but you have these impactful moments, and it was that exact moment that I was like, wow, this is going to be bigger than what we think, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember that part. It is, yeah, gripping. Like I said, there's more than once I was definitely holding back tears. So it was very, very effective filmmaking, great storytelling because it's like, I think, the great part of your film that makes it so captivating is that you're sort of introduced to it as like this is a group of fans who are very enthusiastic, who build these uniforms and it's fun for them obviously, and they go to conventions, and then there's this whole other aspect to the film that involves the charity work and appearances at hospitals and these emotionally gripping parts that it goes beyond fandom. And I think let's drill down on that. And Tom, I think you can help me out a little bit here, because obviously, you're a part of this story. Tell me about your relationship and your start with the 50 first. Like, what point in your life did you determine this was something you wanted to get involved with, and how did that start?
So, well, it started when I was a kid, but that the club wasn't really around. So, well, it was around for most of my childhood, but I didn't really understand what was going on. There was people that were dressing up. I actually have a picture of me standing next to a Darth Vader, but the club didn't exist at that time. So that was actually the real costume that was on tour, and someone was wearing it at the time. So that's why it was so amazing. But when the club did start and I was going to these conventions at a young age, because my dad was taking me, I would see stormtroopers and all this, and I was like, Jesus, this is amazing. But I knew of the club. I would always visit the booth. They always have a booth, and you know, it wasn't until, which is kind of funny, my sister started dating one of the members,
Oh,
and I got talking to him. I'm like, hey man, like I want to join and everything. I've been hanging out with them, already at the conventions. I was sort of just um, get an idea of what kind of people they are, and going to after parties, but just also volunteering and helping out where I could. Um, and it was a great group of men and women, and of all walks of life. So uh, I had ordered a costume through this company, and I was waiting for my big brown box with all my parts. And I was impatient, so I had a waiting list for the stormtrooper costume, which I ordered. So I put together a Tusken Raider instead. I had ordered the parts, and my very first costume, my very first approvable costume that got me into the 501st was a Tusken Raider, and which is also echoable for the Rebel Legion, which is another group. But I didn't care about that. I was just a bad guy, you know. Um, but still an amazing group. And we do a lot with them together all the time. And many members own or have both, are part of both groups. But regardless, the dark side is where I laid my love. So I all my costumes are of, stormtroopers or those types of guys. I do have a Mandalorian, and some other things, but uh, I did recently rock out one of the most obscure rebel costumes of all time, and his name is Jackson. He's a green rabbit, and I'm the first one to ever do him. He comes from a 1977 comic book, Star Wars Marvel Comics. He's on the cover of issue 8, and he's green and with long ears and, and the whole thing. And he was just always a part of my childhood, and no one had ever done him, not legitimately. So a couple $1,000s later,
Yeah.
I have a very unique costume, which I just wore this past weekend at C2E2, and I wore at Celebration, which was amazing. I I'd never come close to feeling like a celebrity until I wore that costume, because I couldn't take a couple feet without being stopped for a picture or someone losing their mind. I was up on stage for all the world to see during Star Wars Celebration. They brought me up there. I met Kevin Scott, the author responsible for bringing Jackson into canon. Just amazing time that I had up there, and in this costume, just I had people calling my name, hey, Rosy props, which is, whatever, because they knew Jackson was coming. I was making posts where to find Jackson and at which day. So it was amazing. And I got to bring him out and premiere him there. Well, actually C2E2 first, but yeah. So the costuming aspect is something that could be very full of adrenaline, and very cool. There's also a very weird feeling where you get all this attention in costume, and then you take off the costume and you're just a regular Joe walking the convention. You're like, nobody knows who I am anymore. It's a weird thing. But the kids too. The kids just are amazing. That's the other thing. I've had little kids come up to me and grab my pinky or my hand or hug me, and they love it, and so do the parents. So it's real to them, and these costumes are legit, and you look like you just walked off the floor. So this group was amazing, and I just wanted to be a part of it. And then the charity thing and all this stuff came later, actually. I'm not gonna say I joined just for that reason, but that is such a huge part of it, where you go to these hospitals and you see these kids, and change their lives in certain ways, because you're doing things for them too. Like Noah, I mean, his father just messaged me the other day, still keeps in touch with me, and thanks us all the time about what we did for his son and the memory that we captured of his son. So, I mean, that's what it's about. You may start out with one thing, but once you get to know the organization and the club and the group, it could be so much more if that's what you want it to be. And so that's kind of how I got my start, and that's where I'm at. And I just felt it was important to tell this story about who this club is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you did, because I of course have seen like pictures, of fans in the 501st, like at conventions and stuff like that. But I had no idea that it was like a proper community that is not just a fan community, but it's a community of people, doing really inspiring work, and just uplifting, all kinds of people And to me, it's just a great example of what fandom can do for good. And I just love seeing that. So I really enjoy hearing your story about that, and I hope people watching this will check out the 501st and the Midwest Garrison if you're in the Midwest, because what you guys do I think is just very, very cool. Mike, I want to turn to you. Documentary. You've had a couple of screenings of it now. How's the feedback been? From people in the community and from people maybe who are closer to me who are being introduced to this film. What's the reaction you've been getting?
Positive, which has been very reaffirming for us.
Yeah.
It's good that people are enjoying it. People are going into it not knowing what to expect, and then realizing that they're enjoying it. I guess I should probably break it down that there are a lot of people that don't understand what the 501st is,
Right.
or this is a film. Yes, it's about the people. This is a film to introduce people to what the 501st is or who these people are. If you have no idea what they do, watch this film. I mean, you're going to start to understand why people do what they do. I don't think, I mean, you're not going to know why people do what they do unless you actually do it yourself. This is probably one of the closer, this is one of the closer ways to be able to do that without having to suit up and to go do an event or go do a charity event. So, yeah, so it's been positive.
Everyone I talked to that night, seemed to be really impressed by it, and I'm sure there's tons of fans on social media who haven't had a chance to see it yet, but are chomping at the bit. Are there any future plans in motion for more screenings of the film, or is there anything in the works for perhaps a streaming release or a disc release?
Okay, as far as dates, we do know that it's going to be later this year that we'll be releasing it for streaming and for DVD. As
Whoa.
far as other streamings in person, if there's someone out there that wants to host us, Tom and I would be glad to stop on out and screen the film. If you got a theater or whatnot, we'll definitely do that. But yeah, August, September-ish. That's all we know right now. We're still working on details. But
Oh, very cool. And I take it, do you guys have stuff set aside for uh, extras for the disc release?
Yeah, that's actually something we had to go back and do, and we filmed some extra things for the DVD. So, which was great because there was some footage that we had too that we used for the extras, but we also were able to do a round table with the founding fathers of our garrison, and even I don't know, should I tell everything or is that giving it away? But
I mean, yeah, I can't see any harm in that,
yeah, and then we did with one of the founding fathers. We did a piece on him because he's got some Alzheimer's right now, or dementia. I'm sorry, not Alzheimer's.
Outside of dementia.
Yeah. So we just kind of highlighted and touched on that a little bit, but yeah. So definitely to answer your question, we did have to do some extras for the extras.
All right. Well, I am very much looking forward to that. Glad that's going to be coming out this year. Before we get out of here, I'll have another question for you after this. But for those who are not familiar with the project, where can fans find information about this film, and where will they be able to hear the news when the streaming and discs are announced?
Well, we have Facebook and Instagram. So Facebook is Behind the Bucket. Instagram is Behind the Bucket Doc. And we have our website Behind the Bucket as well. We'll be announcing. Do we even have Twitter? I think so. Mike?
It's kind of defunct. We haven't used it. I don't know if anybody uses Twitter or X that much. Yeah.
But Facebook, Instagram is probably the two that we, as far as social medias that we've been using so far. We have uploaded photos of cosplayers up there and past events and screenings that we did. we've won best documentary. We've won best in show. So those are some awards from some film festivals we've done. So there's a lot of cool behind the scenes photos on there too of Mike filming and us in different situations. So and then you get to know the crew a little bit too on there. But we'll definitely be making announcements. We actually have a meeting coming up between the 3 or 4 of us that we're gonna start talking about how we're gonna roll this out as far as promotion wise and stuff too. So yeah, so good things are coming. So if you're not following us, give us a follow on there, and then you'll be notified as soon as things come up.
You guys can put me down for a pre-order already.
Perfect.
And then before we get out of here, Tom, I'll stick with you to start, but I'm going to ask Mike this as well. Do you what future projects are you guys working on anything that you can talk about that's going to be coming down the line? Is there any ideas for future collaborations between you guys?
Oh yeah.
Like what is the future look for you guys? Because this is
Well,
such a great strong note to start on.
Yeah, I love working with Mike, and we're on the same page about a lot of things, and I've learned so much from him. So we're working on another project where we have a mission statement. We kind of have an idea of what we want to do, but we're sticking with the nerdum. So we are, and we're sort of expanding our horizons on costuming. So what we're looking to accomplish here is a new documentary series called Finding My Tribe. And we are talking to cosplayers. We're talking to unique people that you wouldn't think, like psychologists, and the difference between the Star Wars fan and the Star Trek fan. What about someone's personality drives them to want to go into one fandom versus the other? So these are the perspectives and the history that we want to cover. In this new documentary series, we want to get into all aspects of cosplay and furries and a little bit of kink and fetish maybe, but we have some interviews coming up with some celebrities. One Fawn Davis, who is generously offered to talk to us, who is the if you don't know who he is, he's worked on Star Wars and many other pop culture movies. We've talked to industry guys that use their props and make these things for movies, and then sort of see how it drifts into the cosplay world, and how these two worlds have almost been interchangeable, and how even some of these industry guys are becoming cosplayers, like Adam Savage, for example, who does it every year. So it should be very interesting. This is something that I'm also getting involved with, and I want. We're not here to make fun of any of these communities or any of these fandoms. We just want to give them a voice, just like we did with Behind the Bucket, and give them an opportunity to talk about their world, their fandom, and what they're into. And we hope that within the title, Finding My Tribe, that someone maybe watches and finds their people, their tribe.
Wow, that sounds awesome. And also it sounds like a significantly larger scale than this documentary. Mike, can you flesh that out a little bit? When you talk about scope, is this new series, is it kind of like connected to what you said earlier about the toys that made us? Is that your vision for this new project?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the direction that we're going. Or I shouldn't say I think. I know that's the direction we're going. I'm looking forward to working with Tom on this. Actually, I shouldn't say looking forward to, because we've already started a couple bits and pieces of it. So it's been good to just start going down that path. But I have to also say that we're not making fun of any of these groups. We're just trying. I'm a knowledge seeker. I know Tom's a knowledge seeker as well. I just want to know, like, why do groups do these, or why do you do this? What's behind this? Like, there's no malice. It's just more. I'm just a curious person in general, and I need to know. And so that's what this whole project is going to be about. So going to these different groups. I mean, even Civil War reenactors.
Yeah.
Why do you do it? Like, nothing wrong with it. I just want to know, what you do, how you do it, what kind of time do you put into your uniforms, and what other things, how do you prep for the certain day, and which is going to be nice because I don't know if Tom mentioned that to you before, but it's almost going to be like a dirty jobs type thing where he's going to be going in and experiencing what they're experiencing.
Whoa, very cool. Well,
Yeah.
on that note, and Tom, I'll let you expand on this in a second, but on the note about being a curious person, I think that absolutely has to be at the core of any documentary project. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be trying to script a narrative. You should be trying to just investigate and find out and, bring that stuff to the surface and let those stories, play out organically. Very cool. Tom, I'll give you the last word. This dirty jobs aspect to it, are you looking forward to that? Are you nervous about it? How do you feel?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the first thing I told Mike is that once again, we're not here to make fun of any of these groups. I'm going to be the butt of the joke in any situation. I'm going to be putting that fursuit on or whatever. I want to be running the trenches with the reenactors. I want to know what it feels like, and I want to give my honest opinion of what I think, and maybe of these preconceived notions that I had about it, how they might change. And so there's going to be this narrative going on, is what we're going to try to do, and talk about these groups, and just pull out the pluses, and just the people that are involved. Much like Behind the Bucket, it's not a movie about Star Wars. It's not a movie for people that like Star Wars, but it's a movie about a group of people that are using Star Wars to catalyst in many other things. So I think what I really enjoy about these projects and these documentaries is that I'm sort of like a low key journalist. I really do like interviewing and getting down to it and finding these and making these connections and talking to people. So that's what we're hoping for on this, and we just want people to be receptive to it, and we hope that with Behind the Bucket we have something to point to and show that, hey, we're all in. All right, this is what we love. This is what we're into. We just want people to we want to educate. That's what we want to do. We want to educate people, and we want to be educated ourselves. So and I'm pretty sure we will be. So I'm excited for what bloopers or behind the scenes we might get out of this. But so far, we've been on the interview type of kick, where a lot of it's been sitting down, but talking to some really interesting people. But the fun stuff is coming, so I'm looking forward to that for sure.
That is awesome to hear. That sounds like a really cool project. I am definitely on board to check it out, and I hope you guys will come back as soon as you have some news about it. I will definitely be checking that out for sure. And I just got to say, when it comes to Behind the Bucket, I love the film. Like I said, it was an emotional experience watching it at the screening that I went to, so I'm really glad I saw it. And, to me, it just stands out because we live in an era where there's all kinds of news stories on social media, like all the time, about negative fan reactions to things and backlashes, and people using social media to to bitch and moan about whatever, and to the point where it gets like very dark. And the Star Wars fan community has had elements of that, and it is so great to see a film that shows fandom as not only non-toxic, but the opposite of that, as totally positive, as fun and inclusive and uplifting and inspiring. I think it's a great subject for the documentary. I think you guys did excellent execution. It's a good-looking film and good soundtrack as well. So congrats on that. Looking forward to the discs. And thank you both so much for coming by the podcast to talk about it and to celebrate Star Wars Day with me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for listening. You know, there's no shortage of great content out there, so you choosing to spend some time listening to this show means quite a lot. If you're so inclined, please give this podcast a 5-star rating and a positive review wherever you get your podcasts. And share our links wherever you can, or mention this show to anyone you know looking for a podcast recommendation. All of this helps us out a great deal, and I appreciate it. You can connect with us on social media too. We are at Play That Podcast on Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and even TikTok. Or we are at Play That Rock and Roll on YouTube and Instagram. Please post a comment and say hello. Finally, Play That Rock and Roll is a proud member of the Pantheon podcast community. So if you're looking for more music podcasts beyond this one, trust me, start with Pantheon. You won't be disappointed. Otherwise, I appreciate any and all efforts you take to support us here at Play That Rock and Roll. Be sure to join us next time for more great music and stories from the world of classic rock.